Good morning, everybody. As we start off today, I want to show you a map looking at the last 24 hours of temperature change. So the numbers represented here just compare the temperature this morning about 6 a.m. To the temperatures yesterday at 6 a.m. And it's just kind of highlighting the position and how quickly this front is advancing through this midsection of the country. There are parts of Wyoming, just as an example of some of the most extreme changes, that have already seen up to a 60-degree change in the temperature. But generally speaking, as the front comes through, it's dropping temperatures off over about a 2 to 3 hour time period in that 30 and in some place up to 40-degree range. This front's going to continue to advance south and east throughout the day today, very rapidly moving across the country. And as it does so, it's going to be just changing the conditions in such a fast way that we're going to see flash freeze events going on. We're going to see very quickly whiteout conditions due to the snowfall. And we're going to watch this low that's responsible for this temperature change to just curl up over parts of Michigan and Ontario right in through here over Lake Huron later today, become just a very deep and powerful winter storm. It's going to affect the East Coast with rain. It's going to affect the Midwest with a brutal outbreak of colder air. But while all of this is going on, there's actually some weak ridging over the West that's going to prevent much of the West from seeing too much of an adverse effect out of this. Now, I was looking at some satellite imagery just as the sun was rising this morning here, and I want to take note of just the cloud field that's moving through Texas. Do you see that very sharp edge? Now, if I go back into last night, you're looking now at infrared satellite imagery. And I know there's not a lot of contrast, but can you see the difference in the shading and the gray right in through this area? Now, I'm going to keep going back in time, and you'll notice that that continues to shrink to the north. And this is just how quickly last night the front advanced out of Colorado and Kansas to the south. So I know it's subtle, but keep your eye right here. As we play this forward, you can see the cold air just advancing through the panhandles, sinking through parts of Texas into New Mexico and Oklahoma. And the speed at which this front is moving, I kind of just made a measurement off of it, off the satellite here, and I at times see it moving up to 50 miles an hour. And this is just one aspect of this very active pattern. This is kind of an interesting view of our all hazards weather map. It's been a while since I've kind of seen the map so colorful. In fact, I was only able to identify 2 states that did not have some sort of weather watch or warning or advisory, and that would be Nevada, and that's going to be Arizona. Everywhere else, we either have wind chill warnings, that's much of the shading that you've seen through here, freeze watches, freeze warnings. This is all a winter storm warning in this shade, and now we have blizzard warnings that have been out for parts of the Dakotas getting into the western Corn Belt here. You can see the same thing happening coming off of the Great Lakes. So this is a highly dynamic system. It's affecting a lot of the country, kind of at an important time of year. And I also, as I'm about to kind of explain what's going to happen with this system, I want you to also keep an eye on what's going on here in the Pacific Northwest where there are winter storm warnings, because there is an ice event that could possibly hit this region too as one system exits and another one enters. The winds in this particular system in the Midwest are going to be quite fierce as this storm wraps up into the Great Lakes. So this is just kind of an hour-by-hour look at the wind speed and direction as the front just continues to press through the day today, through parts of Michigan, Indiana, slipping down to Tennessee, Kentucky, down along the Mississippi River, and all the way into the Gulf Coast. So very strong northwest winds. At times will be 30 to 50 miles an hour. And as we work our way into Friday, the winds coming off the Great Lakes will be very, very strong. We'll get a lot of lake effect snow out of this in very narrow but heavy bands. But here we are Friday evening, and we still have a large area. I kind of measured this at about 1,500 miles in radius of the size of this low. So this will be a 36 to possibly 48-hour wind event around this low. So let's play it all the way through Friday night and into Saturday morning. And by the time we get to midday on Saturday, we'll begin to see the winds calming down on the backside of this as the pressure gradient lessens. But notice through midday Saturday, we're still anticipating incredibly strong winds out of this system. On the precipitation type and intensity side of this, let's just play forward here starting at 7 a.m. this morning, working our way through midday and getting toward this evening at the progression of this low. So by this evening, we see the main frontal position here coming out of Michigan, right along the Indian-Ohio border, cutting right through Kentucky and Tennessee down here. Out ahead of this, we're going to watch an interesting event coming out of the Carolinas. I'm going to take you back there again. You can see there's quite a bit of heavy rain in the Carolinas early this morning. We're going to watch for the potential for some ice and snow along the Appalachian Mountains. But given that this part of the storm is in its warm sector, the warmer air is going to overtake that and spread rain where there could be some snow early this morning. There's going to be rain by this evening. And that's going to be the case throughout much of New England, where we have maybe some early morning frozen precipitation. By the evening, it's going to be converted over to rain. Now I'll come back to what's happening in the northwest in a second, but let's keep our eye here on where this low is by early tomorrow morning, by about 7 a.m. It's sitting right here over Lake Huron. Very tight pressure gradient on the backside, strong winds. We're going to see that low over the eastern Great Lakes and into Ontario. And that's where the lake effect snow is going to really set up for Friday. And the very strong winds and cold air are going to press into parts of the northeast. So just a powerful system here. Now, if you notice, let's go back. Remember, pink shading on this represents ice. So looking here kind of along the coast of Oregon and Washington, getting into tomorrow morning, snow in the interior, rain farther south, but there's the potential for some ice. Could get into the Willamette Valley and then north into parts of Washington. So this next system is going to have a very shallow cold air mass in place with warm air going over the top of it. And that's what's possibly going to lead to the chance of some ice out of this system. Again, this will spread through northern Idaho out of Washington and then work its way into Montana, bringing in some light snow. We're actually going to watch this on Sunday, this northern system become a clipper that could come through the Midwest early next week. So giving you some numbers here, I like what the National Digital Forecast Database is suggesting between now and midday Christmas morning in terms of snowfall totals. Remember, this will be, what's going on in this area will be incredibly fast winds, meaning that snowfall totals will be difficult to measure given the drifting that we expect out of this. And then in the northwest, this is the probability over the next 3 days of getting at least 1/10 of an inch of accumulation of ice. And so that region right in through here has the highest probability. So let's keep a very close eye on that particular spot. Now, along the East Coast, just want to point out the total rainfall coming out of the Carolinas and the Mid-Atlantic and north. We could see 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches out of this. So this is going to be a wet go of it. But we're going to go over to a drier pattern in the midsection of the country as high pressure comes in. But the West is about to see a multi-day, probably 10 to 15 day go of very wet conditions starting late this week, and much of the next 10 to 15 days following that. We're going to come back to that in just a second. What I want to show you before we get there, though, is what the temperatures are going to do. So this is today's high temperatures. Anomalies are shaded. So my anomaly color bar goes down to 40 degrees or 39 degrees below the climatological average. So everywhere that you see this color, that is where we are below or off my color bar. I should probably make an adjustment there. But it's a pretty rare event to see that. So as we play this forward, that's getting into Friday, Saturday's temperatures. Now remember, these are high temperatures compared to normal. Getting into Sunday, Christmas Day. And there we go into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Now what you see here by the time we get out to next Wednesday is that, for example, Amarillo could see more than a 60-degree swing in temperatures. And what's happening here is a major shift in the jet stream level winds that by the time we get out there to like December 27th, we're going to be seeing an extended piece of the Pacific jet covering over 5,000 miles from China and Japan all the way to the West Coast. As we've been talking about, this is the first time I've seen this occur going back several months where there's no big high amplitude ridges either over Alaska or Greenland. That's going to really affect our temperature pattern and our precipitation pattern. So let's now use the European model to see how this might play out. This is today's operational runs. We've already seen the first system. There's the potential icing event we're watching later this week on Friday into Saturday morning in the northwest. Now there is going to be a clipper, so see the system coming in here on Saturday. This is Saturday evening. So ice in the Columbia Basin possible, heavy snows near Spokane and north, and then getting into British Columbia, but rain to the south of this. Well, as that low comes through, it will kick off a little shortwave out of Alberta and Saskatchewan that will dive around the deeper trough here, coming into the Dakotas and into the western Corn Belt and curl up possibly here with some light snow over the eastern Corn Belt. Now I'm just going to play the end of this quickly so you can see what to expect. Watch the West Coast. As we just move forward through early next week, into midweek next week, and all the way up to the end of next week, there's just constant onshore flow. And what you saw is multiple systems kicking off on the eastern side of this. We don't yet have the details of how this is going to shape up. I just want you to see what's about to occur because it's going to be wet most places across the lower 48 as we finish 2022 and go into 2023. This is kind of like drought reducing type pattern, and I'm pretty excited about it because the top goal that I have for forecasting this winter is just to know how much of this country will still be in drought going into the spring of 2023. So to see the jet stream doing something it did not do last winter is encouraging. Remember, last winter at this time, we shut it down for the West Coast, especially California. Not the case going all the way out there into week 2, which goes all the way to January 5th on this map. The temperatures during that time period are going to go from where they are now locked into this Arctic air mass to become quite mild across the country. So if we just park this out here day 5 through 10, and then stretch it out here into that beginning of January time frame, we see some more mild air coming across the country with maybe a return to some cooler air in the west, primarily driven by those winter storm systems that are coming in through that area. So that's the top thing we're going to be looking out for. Tonight's in-depth report, we're going to talk about the relationship with this and La Nina, because to see the pattern doing what you just watched here, that is not typical La Nina behavior, and we just need to talk if that's something we're going to see more often going into January, February, and March. In South America, the thing we'll be watching most carefully is something called the Antarctic Oscillation. If you're from Australia, they call this a southern annular mode. It's basically a measure, kind of like we have in the Arctic Oscillation, of the pressure pattern from Antarctica going north. It's been positive for so long. So I got to ask the question, when do we expect the pattern to break for Argentina? It'll be very difficult through their summer now for great fronts to just move through Argentina, bringing in a tremendous amount of rain while the Antarctic Oscillation is positive. And you see it's forecast to stay that way. And that's why the new ECMWF forecast for precipitation continues to favor a drier bias for much of Argentina, with the exception of the Buenos Aires province here. But the newest runs did bring near normal rains back to much of southern Brazil while keeping much of central and northern Brazil wet, which means the finish to this crop in Brazil, first crop, is going to be quite favorable in terms of weather conditions. So we'll cover all this again tonight in the in-depth report. Appreciate your attention. Just as a reminder, my last report will be the ones I'm doing tonight and tomorrow morning. I'm going to take the week between Christmas and New Year's off to spend with family. So I'll pick back up again at the beginning of the new year. I always appreciate your attention. Have a great rest of your week, and just be careful with this winter storm, please. Thanks.